All right.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient webinar. We are Mary Fran Bontempo and Kristen Smedley, and believe it or not, we know our brilliance, but we didn't always. In fact, both of us know what it feels like to be lost, afraid, unproductive, unsuccessful, and unhappy, which is probably to some degree or another how everyone is feeling in these unprecedented and uncertain times. That's a lot of yuck. But without it, there would not have been the need for resilience, which we've discovered is the key to uncovering your brilliance. We are both, and as I list this, I always get ready to laugh because we are both TEDx speakers. We're authors. We've created programs, podcasts, online shows, and none of it, and I mean none of it, was part of our plan. This was not what either one of us expected for our lives. But before all that good stuff, we both went through a lot of not very good stuff. But in working together and then getting to know each other, we realized that although the details of our stories were different, there was this underlying theme of resilience and resetting after getting through challenges, rising with that resilience, and then finally being able to reveal what we've called our brilliance to the world.
So we want to share with you the process that we did with you and show you how to not only navigate the crisis, but not just a crisis, but everyday challenges as well. And so that you can share your brilliance with the world too. We're gonna go through our whole process of the reset, rise, and revealing your brilliance. But here's the most brilliant thing you're gonna find out. We're not teaching you anything new. You're not going to learn anything that you don't already know. You actually already have it. I don't know why people, everyone thinks that I don't know if I'm resilient. I have to learn that. You actually already have it. And it's Mary Fran always uses the word inherent. It's an inherent thing. You have it inside of you. You were born with it. Actually, everybody was. We all just don't feel like it, do we? You learned, this is always my favorite example. You learn to walk and talk. Like, you couldn't, that's an inherent thing. And then you didn't, well, I don't think any of us succeeded with that at first. And I think Mary Fran a lot of times would wish that I didn't succeed with that.
Especially the talking part. The walking doesn't bother me. The talking.
But that's the cool part. When you think about it, you tried when you were learning to walk and talk. Think about the babies, all the pictures that you took of them trying, failing. And we have like magnificent videos of that, of the trying and failing, until they figure it out and mastered it, and not letting the failures ruin your chance to success, and to not let it crush you from keep on trying.
Yeah. So that's what the resilience part of all of this is. Let me see if I can move this forward. There we go. So resilience is about getting through pain and disappointment without letting them crush your spirit. That's a great definition of that. So as Kristen just said, when we learn to walk and talk, we're children. We use our resilience constantly when we're children. It's simply part of the process of learning and succeeding, but we don't name it. We don't identify it for the simple reason that it is part of us. It is that inherent piece that we have, but we don't even think about it because it's just there. It's ready when we call upon it. But as time goes on, we forget that we have it because we haven't named it and we haven't thought about it because it's an unconscious thing. So Kristen and I have both experienced things, however, that have forced us to uncover that resilience again and call upon it over and over and over. We call these things that we've experienced train wrecks and sucker punches. So I'm going to let Kristen tell you about her sucker punch, and then I'll tell you about my train wreck.
This is the uplifting part of the journey.
Oh yeah.
So I have had multiple insane training in the ring with sucker punches, but I just want to talk about the one that is the biggest one that really knocked the wind out of my sails. So I don't know if you guys are like me, but I was always a planner. Like, I joke that I would say, my name is Kristen and I'm a Virgo. And I think that's part of the reason that I'm a planner. I actually have 3 planners because no planner thing is good enough for me to do all of my checklists. But I've always been like that. And the other weird thing about me is I have known since the time I was 5 years old that I wanted to be a teacher. I think that the thing was I had a lot of success in school. I was one of those kids, I didn't even need to worry about self-talk because my family, friends, teachers were always like, you're gifted, you're talented, you're blessed, you're great in school, you have so many things you're good at. And school was just a big part of my success. So I wanted to be a teacher, and I planned my whole life for it, and knew that I was going to get married, have a family, have the house I wanted. And I was the rule follower. I know Mary Fran doesn't always think that, but I was the big rule follower. So anyway, my point is I did everything right. And then finally I went to a school. I mean, we're out here in Westchester is where a million years ago was the place to go to be a teacher. So I finally graduated. I landed the job in teaching. That was one of my biggest dreams. Got married, another big dream. Got when the McMansions came out. I had the house, the SUVs came out. I got the SUV. And then finally, my biggest dream of all time, I became a mom. My first son, Michael, was born. And I had everything I ever wanted because I planned and I checked off my list and everything was absolutely perfect. Like, I would get on my own nerves right now if I knew me. So perfect. And then at 4 months old, a doctor here at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, in this little tiny exam room, a doctor said to me, "Your son is blind." And for a planner, that was not in the plans at all. I mean, think about it when you're getting ready to have a baby into your life. And as my belly was growing, my dreams for Michael were growing. Like, I was really good in sports, and I figured I would have, was he going to be the football quarterback or the baseball pitcher? And I thought about all of life's moments, like his prom and graduation. And of course I had him as summa cum laude, right? All of that in that instant went completely dark when the doctor said to me, "Your son is blind." And that sucker punch nailed me, like, literally to the floor, so insanely to the floor. I couldn't get up out of that exam room. And the doctor was like, "I don't know what to tell you." He had no point of reference or anything to give me. And he said to me, "Good luck." And then he said, "Could you get yourself together and get out of this exam room because we have a waiting room filled with people." So.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah. Right.
Thanks, Doc. So that was Kristen's first sucker punch. But how about you jump in and just speed ahead a little bit and tell them about the second big sucker punch, where your sweet Michael was bouncing into your room and you were expecting your second child.
Are we doing that in the next part though? Or do you want me to talk about it now?
Yeah, talk about it now.
So then 3 years later, I'm pregnant with my second child, and with this blindness that my kids have, just to be a little sciencey for the science people on the thing here, there's a 25% chance with each child, with each pregnancy, that you'll have an affected child. And because I didn't pay attention to my high school science classes because I was so busy being funny in the back of the room, I heard that first as 25% chance, like in your whole having kids. So I was like, well, I am an overachiever. We knocked that out with the first one. So the second one, we can have them as many kids as I want now. Like I'll handle the first one, but that's not exactly the way that this works. So it's 25% chance with each pregnancy. And honestly, most people with this blindness do not have another child after the one child is diagnosed, because really raising one blind child is enough to knock the wind out of your sail, but then to risk having more. So, then we found out that 3 years later, at 4 months old, when my second child was born, he's affected with the exact same blindness.
So Kristen had two massive, massive sucker punches right at the time of life when, you know, you're supposed to be full of hope and joy and happiness. Mine happened a little bit later in my life. My kids, I thought, were raised. I thought I had done a halfway decent job. Surprise, I guess I didn't. But on Mother's Day of 2010, my train wreck, I call them train wrecks, my train hit me in a very powerful way. We were celebrating Mother's Day at my mom's house, and I had walked with my family, and I had walked into another room, and all of a sudden I heard a commotion coming from the family room that I had just left. And I walked back in, and my son, David, my oldest, was sitting on the sofa shaking uncontrollably. So we called the paramedics, and they kept asking him what he had taken. What did you take? What did you take? And it was one of those like surreal moments. I'm thinking, what do they mean? What did he take? Now, I knew David was struggling, but I wasn't prepared for that. So anyway, when we got him to the hospital, here it turns out that David had overdosed on a pain medicine that he had stolen and ingested because he was trying to get high and he couldn't get his hands on heroin that day.
Mm.
It turns out that my son was a heroin addict. So as Kristen said, that train wreck immediately changed everything about who I thought I was, where I thought I'd been, what I thought I had built with my life, and where I thought I was going. Any plans that you have are gone in that moment. And the doctors told us that if they couldn't reverse the effects of the medication that he had ingested, he would need a liver transplant if he lived. So happy Mother's Day to me. That was when I found out all of that. And that was when my entire life changed. So here's the thing. We want to ask you, what is your sucker punch or train wreck? And understand this. Sucker punches or train wrecks can take any form. Not everybody is dealing with the major traumas of blindness and addiction, but everybody has something. It could be some kind of a loss. It could be a divorce. It could be a job situation. I mean, certainly all of us right now are dealing with
raising my hand for each one of those.
That one, I got that one.
Yeah. Ooh,
certainly all of us. We're all overachiever and sucker punches. We're all dealing with the train wreck of the pandemic right now. That is huge, and it's affecting everyone. But it's not your first experience with this. So identifying it and naming it. And is there more than one? So eyes on that. So let us know if there's something that you want to share. And if you don't, that's not a problem either, obviously. So you want to identify this challenge because that's the first step in setting your brain towards moving it forward. But you also have to ask yourself this question. This is you, Kay. This is yours.
Yeah. This is the question I constantly come back to because I am the professional sucker punch getting hit by. Do you want to come through it broken or brilliant? And I mean, let that sit in for a minute because we are all in the midst of something right now, which is, you know, kind of good. We're all in it together, but with everything that comes, every struggle. And this is like the mantra question that I ask my kids when they come complaining about some big thing has happened, even if it's big or little. You know, you're going to get through it, but do you want to be broken or brilliant? That's the number one question. And today the answer is brilliant. We're answering it for you. We're gonna now jump into the reset. So you get hit by the sucker punch or you get nailed by the train wreck, and now we're gonna talk about resetting with that inherent resilience that you already have. We're gonna help uncover that. So what does that look like? Well, like I said, we're in the midst of this is probably, if it's not the biggest challenge that ever hit humanity, I really think that it is. And you have to, there's the need now to recognize that inherent resilience. It's actually a universal need. Like I said, it's like, I'm taken comfort in the fact that we are all in this together. Like literally, isn't that a big hashtag that they're all using now too?
Yes, it also comes from the High School Musical. They're doing that song and that dance again. We're all in this
And I tell
together.
you that I lived for that song for
Just,
years.
I
And the
know.
kids were like, oh my God, it's back.
Really good.
They're
Yeah.
losing their minds. So when we're down, we can look at the situation and determine what step we can take to move things forward with resilience. And I want you to emphasize the word step. We're going to take steps for that. Look, I guess it's that whole like it or not, like it or not, we're on a global timeout. And there's pros and cons with that. I'm sure that you can all sit there and think about. And for most of us, it's not easy, not fun, but the word opportunity keeps coming to the surface. There's opportunity to get back on track, to see where we are and why, and to begin to figure out what we want to do about it. And now it's the how. How do we do that? So let's go into some action here.
So you're going to reset with resilience. So here's your reset toolbox. The first thing is you're going to end up taking a look at your value system and what's important to you. That's number one. Number two, you're going to take a look at your perception and how you see these things, how you see these challenges, and can you find the opportunity within them? And then lastly, we're going to control the controllables. What's in your control? So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is values. So, sucker punches and train wrecks, they take away so many things from us. They take away our sense of identity. They take away our security. They take away our plans. But when a crisis hits, we're forced back to basics. So it's actually the perfect time to ask some really defining questions. What is important to you? What means the most? When are you in that place where you feel settled and calm and secure? What are your core values? So examples, you can look at this little graphic here, but examples could include truth, honesty, faith, hard work, commitment, creativity, humor, courage. And here's the thing, if you're not really sure of what your value system is, we found a really cool website. It's called viacharacter.com. V as in Victor, I-A, the word character.com. And I actually took that test and it was really interesting results. So if you want to get a little bit of a handle on what your values might be specifically, take that test and just see where you come up. So the question then becomes, how can you incorporate these values into your life? Are you living in a way that matters to you? Now, let's face it. If we were in a perfect world, you would be able to live that through your work and through your job, but that's not always possible with everybody. So is there at least some way that you are incorporating what's important to you in the things that you do during the day? We're fortunately now we're without the minute by minute distractions of this constant barrage of information and busyness and all this. So it's really a perfect time to just kind of settle in to that space where you feel grounded and where you feel the most important. What parts of your life give you the most satisfaction? When did you feel that you were the happiest and you were living most true to yourself? So when we're going to reset with resilience, you want to take a look at your values and take a look at that site, viacharacter.com. And now we're going to move on to perception.
And I put that in the chat too, that website.
Okay, good.
Hopefully I spelled it right. The doctor's office, the eye doctor isn't open. I've got these contact lenses that I need a prescription update. And now we go into perception.
And now we go on perception.
Talk about my eyes and the fact that they're not working right. Anyway. So if you see this slide on the screen, in case you can't see it, I'll just describe it, that it is a little, looks like maybe a canoe, maybe a family of three out there, and the water's nice and calm, and the sun is either just going up or going down, but it's that nice orange sky. So I actually did a poll on social media a few months ago about this, and my question was, does this What word would you use to describe this? Peaceful or stressful? And if, like probably many of you, it was like 98 point something percent said peaceful. For me, though, this was diagnosis day. This was when I heard your son is blind. This was my moment of, I felt like that doctor when he said good luck and gave me nothing. He put me out on the water with my little family. The sun was going down, literally darkness was coming, and there was not one resource that I had to reach out to. And because of that, because my journey started that way, I was in a horrible pit for, I'm not exactly proud now, but I've come pretty far, but it was a good 3 years. Like I said, there's 3.5 years between my first two kids, because it was taking me a long time to try to get my head around how I was going to do this. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the only reference I had for a blind person was Stevie Wonder and Little House on the Prairie, that show from when I was growing up. And on that show, I mean, the daughter that went blind, they shipped her off to a school and they visited her once in a while. Like, that was my perception of blindness. So I saw it as devastating, lonely, nightmare. Oh my God. And so did everybody else. And I can imagine what your face was like when I said I have two blind children, right? Everybody is kind of like, oh my God, that was me. But then, so lucky for me, my perception of blindness completely shifted. And I want you to put yourself in a place of either where you're at right now with your business, your family, your life, whatever, with everything being shut down and the whole world being turned upside down, or if you have something else going on, a relationship issue, something happening with a child. And think about this, because if my perception can shift, so can yours. So as I'm in the pit, and I'm getting ready for my second child to be born. And remember I was saying about how as your belly's growing, when you're carrying a child, so are all your hopes and dreams, right? Well, I was sitting, I guess I was about 7.5 months pregnant with my second child, and I was still crying every single day. And this one morning, I was kind of proud of myself. I actually got out of bed that morning, and I only made it to the edge of my bed, and I was just sitting there in a sob mode. I just could not, because you know what happened? I always say I'm the delirious optimist, right? I mean, I really do live a lot in denial, and it has carried me a long way a lot of times. And I was definitely in denial of that 25% chance of this second one being affected. But all of a sudden, reality hit. And that morning I thought, oh my God, if this second one is affected too, 25% is a big number. And I was having like this nice, I was raised in Catholic schools in a very faith-based family, and I was having a full-on tantrum prayer, in air quotes, about the fact that don't you dare do this to me again, right? Was just not going to happen. I can't do it. And I'm ugly cry sobbing with hair like sticking out all over the place. And I was kind of doing the screaming tantrum in my head, because my Michael, who then is almost 3.5, I could hear him playing down the hallway in his bedroom where all of his little toys and all were. And all of a sudden, as I'm at my most ugliest and literally losing it, he comes bouncing into my room. I always say that Michael never walked. He still doesn't walk. He bounces. And I mean, he's 20 years old now, and he still has this little bounce in his step. And he came bouncing in, and his now most famous thing that he ever said to me, the greatest line I ever heard in my life, was, "Mommy, isn't this the best day ever?" You can imagine this ugly cry, hair out to here, and I'm like, what? What do you mean it's the best day ever? And he goes, "Mommy, the sun is up and I have all my toys and I'm just so happy." And he spun around and walked out, and I thought, what is the matter with me? I was a teacher. I have a huge family. I knew thousands of kids, and I had never in my life seen a kid as happy as Michael was. And at that moment, people say God whispers, he nails me in the head. He Michael showed me in that moment, he didn't give a crap about blindness. It didn't bother him like at all. And I thought about all the stuff in his little 3.5 years that he had done. And he had done everything that every other 3.5-year-old was doing. He was at the park. He was in preschool. He just figured it all out. And it didn't bother him. And I was the one, I always say I was the one that was so bothered that I almost ruined everything. Because all I kept seeing was blindness is devastating. And what I was missing was this opportunity to watch this little person figure it all out and have the time of his life. So when I said, think about what you're up against, if you can just look at it differently, they say, like, if you pull back, and look, I saw a thing the other day. It said a photographer, if they can't get like if this person that took this picture, you can't get the scene right, you change the lens, you go in a different direction and look at it differently to have a whole new view of it. And Michael gave me that whole new view. And I literally surrender to the whole thing. Of course, I don't do a nice, kind surrender. I'm like, all right, I got it. We're going to have a great life, but I'm going to need every tool and resource sent to me because I suck at this, and here we are now. But thank God Michael bounced in that day and changed my whole perception of what was happening.
Yeah. And in my experience, I think things have changed, I think, somewhat now, but back when my son was going through all of this, which was approximately 10 years ago, people had an idea of what a drug addict looked like. Mm-hmm. And they had an idea of what kind of family a drug addict came from. And that was not my perception at all, clearly, because I was the church singer. I ran the youth group at the parish. I was the substitute teacher at the school, which may have course been what finally drove my child to drugs. I don't know, because I had him and all of his friends in class. But my idea of what that looked like was so against what my reality was. Yeah. And changing my perception of what that was and what that looked like allowed me to dive into that world and try to get my son the help that he needed. So, and not define that based on what I thought it was. So one of the lessons that I really learned in terms of perception through all of this, and I ended up applying it beyond, was that, and it also applied to how I wanted things to go after that point, because they didn't, of course, go the way I wanted them to go. There were 2 stints in rehab. There was just all sorts of stuff that I had to learn to be flexible. But what I learned was, when you let go of what you think things are supposed to be, you make room for what they can be.
Yeah.
So where perception is concerned, it's one thing to have hopes, it's one thing to have dreams, but you can't be married to that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I think Kristen and I both had experiences where our perception of things was changed drastically. But in accepting that change, it allowed us to deal with the circumstances and the situation that we were up against, both of us.
Oh my God, but it's so hard.
It is so hard. Let's not joke about this. None of this stuff is easy. It's ugly. It's hard. It's not fun. It's yuck. But that change in perception allows you to do this: controlling the controllables.
So these are, it's what can you control, right? Well,
not much.
We are now, it's not like much. I guess it's easy enough to say that when I was going through my divorce, okay, what can I control? What? Oh my God! But this one is like, there is just so much out of our control. And I will say, we had we wrote this presentation in our Brilliantly Resilient program. We had this, Mary Fran and I had this whole big thing that we were doing. And then this hit. And when I tell you, this is the part of it where I have struggled the most in the past few weeks, with this whole really getting to the core of control the controllables. I mean, there's a few questions that I want to make sure that I ask in a few points. So it is very bizarre time. And so much of it is out of our control. And in crisis, there are things that we can control. I mean, we talked about our perception and our attitude we can control. And we can control our own controllables. And the best place to start with that, Mary Fran always says, is between your ears. In your mind. That's the best place. Once you free up your mind from being stuck in that permanent spot of crisis, like stop watching the news was my first thing.
Yes. Oh my
Turn
gosh.
that off. We actually we only watch a certain, at 6 o'clock at night now, and then this one show at 8 o'clock, and then we can talk about it amongst ourselves in my house, but we finally did shut it off. But and then you begin thinking about how can you move forward. So there's some specific questions I want to ask, and I want to give you my own little situation of how I really started to dive into controlling controllables. So it's, in moving forward, what does it look like for you? What can you control about your current situation? Can you start something new with your work, even your exercise routine? Can you reach clients in a new way? These are all different things thinking about in terms of business and personal. And can you provide value and set your mind to helping somebody else during these challenging times? And then you got to let go of what you can't control and control the controllables. So here's what this looked like for me. I think Mary Fran was getting a little tired of this over a few weeks. I don't know about you guys, but when I was trying to get to the grocery store ever since this pandemic started, I would find myself, I mean, I'm like, I have two teens and a 20-year-old now. My college kid is home. I'm rolling with it all. I am the full-time single mom of them. I mean, we had everything going. I got 2 dogs. I had the whole system going. I got my job. We're pivoting. I'm resetting. I'm doing this whole thing. But I would get to the grocery store and I'd be sobbing in my Jeep. Like I'm like, and I would call Mary Fran. I'm like, what's the matter with me? I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm running this company. I have a global organization, and I couldn't. So I had to figure it out. And it was because so much was out of my control. Somebody coming too close to me. Did they really disinfect everything? And I'm trying to just get food for the kids, and I couldn't do the online shopping. And then what I ended up doing was figuring out, first of all, I had to get it in my head that this too shall pass. This is we're going to get through this. It's not, I think what I kept doing was staying stuck in, oh my God, every time I go to the grocery store, I'm scared to death that I'm going to catch this. And then I finally was like, wait a minute, this is going to end at some point. Like I might have 6 trips to the grocery store during this most horrific time. And then it was, what can I control? I can wear a mask. I look like I'm going to rob a bank with lights when I go to the grocery store now. But I do the mask. I even keep my sunglasses on and a hat. I don't know what that does for the virus, but it makes me feel better.
Your hair won't get infected.
And I don't use gloves because I researched all about gloves. So I have these Lysol wipes that I grab things and I'm throwing them out and going through a million. But anyway, I had to take control of what I could control. And it took me 3 trips the 4th one. I just did the 4th one the other day and I came out, no tears, no nothing. Of course, I forgot half the things on the list.
Congratulations.
Right?
Congratulations. That's a win for you. That's a win.
Even my kids were like, way to go.
As you're saying all of this, I think, taking this whole experience of controlling the controllables, like out of this COVID thing, because gosh, we are all in this and everybody has that common experience. So if you want to take that experience though out of this, like in your experience, let's say you're experiencing a crisis at work or something, what exactly can you influence here? Like what exactly can you control about the situation? And it's so hard to disengage from the things you can't control, but if you can manage to unstick your little white-knuckled grip from hanging on to things that you want desperately to fix, but that you can't, you will find pathways opening up for you in other areas. And sometimes that lets other people handle all of that stuff. So during this reset, what we want you to do is spend a little bit of time in self-reflection. It's the time to do it. I mean, we're probably all going to get sick of thinking about ourselves at some point, but make that time that you do it count and think about your values, get clear on that, See if you need to tweak your perception, and then work on the controlling the controllables. That's your reset toolbox. Values, perception, controlling the controllables. And then now we're going to start moving on towards the rise. How do we rise? Before you rise and before you move out of this place, you have to make a decision. Every single time you are experiencing a crisis or a challenge, you have to ask yourself this question. Are you just visiting that place, or are you going to live there? Are you going to walk in and go, okay, I'm going to deal with this? Or are you going to bring all your luggage and set up housekeeping in the middle of a crisis? Let me give you the answer. We're going to answer all the questions for you here. You don't want to live there. You're just visiting. No, do not live in that place. You're there. Let's not deny it. We're not going to deny the fact that you have challenges, but you don't have to let those challenges define you for the rest of your life. Are they going to become a part of your story? Yes, but let's let them be a part of your story where it helped you build strength, where it helped you build character. Once you define your values, clarify your perception, control the controllables, it's time to rise. You can activate that stuff once you decide that you're not going to stay in the yuck. And I think that's something that Kristen and I both had in common. Like she said, we both like shook our fists at the heavens and why did this happen, and asked ourselves and felt sorry for ourselves for a long time. And then here's the choice. Do you want to live like that forever, or do you just I got sick of myself. I don't know about you, but I got sick of myself and the whining and the complaining. I don't want that to be my story.
Yeah, it's a chapter, it's a page, it's maybe the intro, but then you don't want it to be the rest of the story. That's where I was too. I mean, it was for too long for some of my sucker punches, but then, and I didn't have that expression in my life, which I do now, that's what I say to myself. All right, well, you're going to have the pity party forever.
Right.
Or because you do want to sit there for a minute and take a breath.
You have to acknowledge it. I mean, and let's face it, it's an excuse to eat ice cream and drink wine. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Acknowledge the yuck. You have to acknowledge the yuck and you have to experience it, but you don't want to live there. So how do we, though, get out of it? So here's my deal. We're going to become a 15-minute master. We're going to rise. So the book that I just wrote, you can probably see it in the background over there, The 15-Minute Master. It's a twofold process. The very first part of it is very, very simple. You live within the next 15 minutes. That's it. In this crisis, sometimes that means you just get through. You move forward in 15-minute increments. If you're in the middle of a crisis, get through the next 15 minutes, handle what you need to handle and what you can handle in that moment. Don't think about what's ahead. Don't think about what's behind. You stay there, and if you take the day in those 15-minute chunks, pretty soon you'll find that you have gotten through, you've passed through the worst of it. You break your challenges down, particularly if you're dealing with a crisis, into these 15-minute chunks. So it takes, now here's the next part of it though. If once you do that, if you find that you're slightly on the other side of the challenge, or you have a 15-minute period of time where you can actually think through the process and plan a little bit ahead, then you take the next 15-minute time period and you work through a process. Now, the 15-Minute Master has a 3-question process, arriving at 1 action step. But here's the most important first question. It is, what can I do? And here are the questions that you use to get yourself into that rise. The first thing that you can do, and understand I'm saying what can you do, not what do you want to do, because obviously we all want the problem to go away. I mean, that's what you want. You want the problem to go away. That's not going to happen. So what can you do? The first thing you have to figure out is, what are your resources here? What do you have in your own personal toolbox that you can use to address the problem? Is it knowledge? Is it a certain, a time frame that you have? Is it a previous experience that you have? What is your set of resources? What's your skill set? What are you really good at? I found that for me, and I have a background similar to Kristen, my experience is in education. That's my background. My degree's in secondary ed. One of my skills was research. So when I was hit with this situation with my son, which was completely out of my frame of reference. I had no frame of reference on it. One of the things that I did was turn to my best friend Google. What does this mean? What do I need to get on board? How can I build a team to help me manage this? So, what is your skill set here? Are you a good negotiator? Are you good with humor? Can you put a little lightness into the situation? Are you diplomatic? Can you get in and talk to people who are having a conflict? What is your skill set and what are your talents? Then who is in your tribe? This is so important, right? Kay, you and I,
Oh,
this is
God, yeah.
yeah, we talk about tribe all the time, and not only who is in it, but who can you add to your tribe. You know, we all have different levels of contacts, and you're not always going to be on, you know, a really tight relationship with everybody at one time. But when you have people in your tribe and they're in your tribe because you know you can trust them and rely on them, you're going to go in and out of those relationships. Don't hesitate to ask someone in your tribe who you might not have a super close relationship with, but you know has a skill set who can help you. Don't hesitate to ask. And Kristen, you have a big thing about this, about putting your hand up and
Oh,
ask.
God. Because when I didn't for so long, I'm like, I got this. I got
Yeah,
this. Then I'm like, ooh, I don't
I
think I
don't got
got this.
this. I got this. I
Now
need
I'm like,
help.
now I'm like this. You can help me, and you can help me.
Put your hand up. And here's the last part, and this is so important. Do not be married to outcomes. When you set some kind of a plan in motion for your rise, when you try something, go with the evolution of that. As I said at the beginning of this, you know, we didn't have any idea of what the heck we were going to be doing. And we just thought, well, let's give this a try. And it took
Yeah.
us in amazing, amazing directions. If there's ever a time to release yourself from things turning out according to a plan, this is it. Because nobody has a plan that's working right now. We're making up the rules as we go, and that's okay. Because nobody has an idea of how things are eventually going to shake out. We just don't know. So don't be afraid to try new things to handle problems and just dive in. Try it, try it, try it, and do not worry if it is not perfect. We're not worrying about perfect.
Nope.
Okay.
And this is the best time. Nobody's perfect at anything. Nothing's working right. It's great.
No. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're going to screw up now, because
Right now.
you can blame COVID for every failure that you have right now. It's the perfect excuse. So your rising toolbox, you're going to look at your resources and what you have to handle a situation. You're going to look at your inherent skills and talents, and they could be professional skills or personal skills. Think about the stuff that you're good at and the things that people come to you for. That's where your skill set and your talents lie. Then you're going to look at your tribe and who you can add to it, and then you're not going to be married to outcomes. But none of this matters unless you do this.
Oh boy, this is the fun one. You gotta take action. This is the hard one for me a lot of times though. You have to have at least one action step.
Yep.
You know, the cool part right now is we all have a collective time to think about how we're going to rise. What is that action step? And you can make, if you're like me, making all those lists in the world, you got to at least at the end of the day cross one off that you actually took action. Now, for me, if I go back to the biggest sucker punch with blindness, the biggest action step was the hardest for me because it really put blindness like, oh my God, they're blind. It was Braille and the white cane. I had to get my boys those resources. I had to go find out about them, but they were really hard for me because there was no denying that I had blind kids when I was using words like Braille and the white cane, but I had to go out and get them. And I'll talk a little bit about where that carried my kids. In my divorce, it was, I had to take action with my finances. It is my worst nightmare. I do not like spreadsheets. I don't like any of that, but I had to take action on those things to start the rise, because that was what was keeping me stuck in my divorce stuff. Was I didn't know where I was at with all of the finances, so I was scared all the time. But you have to take that at least one action step, and then before you know it, you start one and then the next and then the next, and the challenges don't seem that big anymore.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is too, when you initiate that action step, and it can be as big or as small as you want, that's your choice. The next thing you do is then just wait. Take a beat. A big word that Kristen and I are really getting fond of is pause.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you need
hard
to
though.
take a beat. It is hard. But you can, once you initiate that action step, you're not going to control the next thing. You have to see whether the circumstances change, whether something comes into weigh in on. Initiate the action step, take your beat, take a breath, and see what evolves from the situation. And then you can move forward and institute the next action step. And as Kristen said, and so on, before you know it, you're on the other side of the challenge. Okay, so we're getting tight on time, so I want to move on to the next thing, which is where we're going to reveal your brilliance. And here's your brilliance. Brilliance means exceptionally clever or talented. Gifted, talented. I love virtuoso. Virtuoso, genius, accomplished. You're a virtuoso. So none of us thinks of ourselves as brilliant. Nobody does. But let me just say this. You all have, and again, as we talked about resilience, you all have an inherent brilliance. It's the thing that you're good at naturally. You know, in this country, we tend to dismiss things that come easily because we still have this puritanical notion that everything has to be hard work. Everything has to be hard. We have to suffer or it's not worthwhile. Wrong, wrong, wrong. If it comes naturally to you, that is where your brilliance is. So here's one of my favorite movies. So do you remember Tom Hanks in Castaway? He's like stuck on this desert island with none of the necessities immediately available. But guess what he did? He figured it out. He built shelter, he caught his dinner, and he even performed dental surgery on himself, which is like the worst scene in the movie until Wilson floats away. Then that's the worst scene in the movie. But here's the thing. He uncovered skills that he had and he used them. He adapted them to a different situation. So, you know, just like Kristen and I both found ourselves, we were both good at school. We were both good at research. When we were hit with our sucker punches, we had no idea what to do, but we knew that we were smart enough to find other people who could help us. And that's what we did. We used our skills and we now, but thankfully we don't have to catch our own dinner yet. Thank goodness. So you figure out what your skill sets are and you remember this.
Skill is a skill is a skill. I tell myself this all the time now. So what was Tom Hanks' character in that movie?
Chuck Nolan.
Chuck.
Yeah.
So no, he wasn't skilled at being dropped off on a desert island. Which, by the way, when I watched that, I was like, might probably be in a ball crying on the side. But he was resourceful. That was one of his biggest skills. Yeah. You know, and when I was looking at my situation with blindness, I was a teacher. Like, how would I go about this as a teacher? No, I didn't know how to raise blind kids. Not many people do. However, I knew I had that one big skill and fun. I made it fun too. But a skill, look, it carries you through, whether it's something that you planned on doing or you have to pick yourself out of a pit. A skill is a skill is a skill.
Yeah, so think about how that skill set that you have is something that you can adapt. Now, this next slide it's our bragging slide, but it's up here for a very specific reason. Both of us, as I said, had backgrounds that we were going to go into teaching, which Kristen did for a short time. I never did because I did it on a part-time basis with substitute teaching. But these are all the things that we have done up to this point by taking skill sets that we had that we in our minds were only applicable in that teaching environment. And we pulled those skills out and we adapted them and we used them for this. So things like, you know, planning curriculums, planning lessons. Okay, we weren't doing that, but we were planning webinars. We were planning presentations. We were, you know, figuring out once again with that research part of both of us, figuring out, okay, how do we do a PowerPoint slide? How do we do a webinar? How do we do this stuff? So we took all of these skills that we had that we thought were only applicable within a certain framework, and we took them out of that framework and transferred them. So take a look at your skill set and see what is transferable. anything that you're good at, there's a good chance that you're already automatically bringing to everything that you do. Acknowledge it and see how you can even expand upon it further.
And you know what's funny? Let me just jump in for 1 sec.
Yeah, please.
When I started my nonprofit that's now around the globe, which is like insane, but when I first started, I would go like this. Oh, I don't really know about that because you see, I was trained as a third grade teacher. So can you help me with that? I was just trained as a third grade teacher. Could you help me with that? And now I'm like, to think I was a third grade teacher and look, like I've shifted it, like, you know, amazingness, but I just used it as like as an excuse. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't trained in that. Could you help me with that?
And there you go. And that's another example of building that tribe. And people are only too happy to share their expertise. Who doesn't want to look smart? So build your tribe, and then that helps you build your skill set as well. Okay, so you're going to uncover your brilliance, and here's how you're going to do it. The first thing you're going to do is name and define your skills and talents. And again, we want to talk about those things like you have natural skills that you know, like maybe decision making is one of your natural skills. Maybe you're good at math. Maybe you're good at that whole research thing. And then you have like transferable skills that you've learned through maybe job positions, leadership. You're good at motivating people. You're good at delegating. That's a great one. Be good at delegating. If you're good at anything, be good at delegating. Let other people do some of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I even just said to my 16-year-old Mitch the other day about he's frustrated. He doesn't have the job that all the jobs are getting canceled, of course, and all of that. I'm like, well, what are you good at?
Yeah.
They're like, he doesn't shut up ever. And he has an opinion about everything. So he's starting a podcast that is about certain topics that he wants his opinion heard. And it's going to be, I hope it's going to be brilliant, but that kind of thing, like he's very good at being opinionated and talking. So where can we use that?
Yeah. And here's the thing, even if it ends up not being brilliant, and this goes back to the idea of not being married to outcomes, you're going to learn something from that experience. Regardless of how it turns out for Mitchell, he's going to learn something from that experience, which is ending up going to be another tool that he'll be able to put in his toolbox for future, you know, for future experiences, for future opportunities, for future things that he can accomplish. So you're going to name and define your skills and talents, figure out how you've used them in the past, and think about what new skills you're uncovering. Like I said, this whole thing about putting together webinars and PowerPoint, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, but we're figuring it out and we're uncovering those new skills in the process. And then who can you partner with? Who can you partner with that you can do some collaborations with? That don't necessarily have to set the world on fire. Take that pressure off of yourself. Do some stuff that might just be fun for you now. And remove the pressure of having to achieve. You don't always have to achieve in order to show your brilliance. Sometimes it's just about sharing and learning for yourself. So take that pressure off of you. And then finally, you want to figure out how you can transfer those skills and use them in the future to either create something new in your business or in your personal life, and that you're sharing your brilliance with the world.
So with that last point, Mary Fran, Eric's got a question in the chat, and it goes along with this, but I think we have one more slide?
Yeah, we do. One more slide. Yep. And
do you want to bring up that last slide?
Yep.
And then we can address the question, because it's cool.
Yep. So here are your brilliant takeaways that we want you to reset with your inherent resilience, take a look at your values, tweak your perception. Then you're going to rise with the resources and skills that you have and talents and your tribe. And you're going to reveal your brilliance by using those skills in new ways, partnering with others, and taking action, because you are brilliantly resilient. You are brilliantly resilient. We all are. So what's Eric's question? Let's address that.
Hey, we're Kristen Smedley and Mary Fran Bontempo of Brilliantly Resilient, and we hope that you enjoyed the Brilliantly Resilient webinar that you just watched. Listen, we can tailor this to if your group, your organization, your company needs this information, we can work with you to tailor it specifically to your group.
Yeah, we have a contact page on our website, brilliantlyresilient.net. So head on over there. Let us know what you might be looking for, what you might be needing for your people, especially in this time where everybody's trying to figure out how to work separately and yet together. So we would love to be able to share this with your organization. And also head on over to our Facebook community, Brilliantly Resilient, if you want more of our stuff, which is quite frankly amazing because we've been able to talk to really wonderful people. We have an online show every day. We are putting out a podcast. So this info's out there and we really want to share it with you. So reach out to us.
Join us and stay brilliant.
There you go.